epiphany I had in default settings. This guy is Dani Tirza. So when I was in part of the negotiations team, I was responsible for all border-related issues, and Dani Tirza was my Israeli counterpart. Now, Dani Tirza is a guy who is a religious Jew who believes that Arabs have no business being there, that he's willing to tolerate Arabs, but definitely they don't have equal rights to Israelis or the Israeli Jews. And he was not only a settler, but he was living in a settlement that was east of East Jerusalem, so a very problematic settlement. And the cherry on top was that he's the guy, he's a famous historian, archaeologist, geographer. He's the guy who designated the route of the wall. For you who know the problem of the wall or the barrier in the West Bank, he's the guy who came up with the line, because he was so who knew the landscape very well and was a personal friend and advisor to the then Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon. So I had a billion reasons to hate him. Now, in the negotiations, we were divided into several levels. Of course, the top level was the president with the Israeli Prime Minister, then the ministers, and then the technical people. So I was part of the technical team, and there was lateral talks, and then talks with we'll bring things to our superiors, both of us, and so on and so forth. So we were at the technical level, supposed to hash out the details of the different options and the technical issues that have to do with the political issues. So with Dani, we had to sort out how we're going to tackle the issue of the borders, because there was a principal disagreement. The Palestinians believe that we have a right, because we accepted the two-state solution as a compromise, that we accepted to exercise our right to self-determination on only 22% of what we believe to be our homeland. We believed we have the right to the entirety of that area, the 22%. And the Israelis disagreed with that. They disagreed that in principle, the Palestinians had a right to a land. They just wanted to negotiate a boundary that would result in secure status. So we were fighting over that principle. At any rate, 7 years, it felt like that. 7 sessions of negotiations, we went nowhere, because we were arguing over the principle of the 1967 line. At one point, Dani and I said, you know what, we're talking about, there's an area in the West Bank that's between Israel and the West Bank that was a no man's land between the 1948 war and 1967. That was peculiar, and it's like a hilltop and then a valley. And we said it's better if we go physically there and discuss it from the field, because the contours of the land are important. So we went there, and here's the picture. So Dani and I are at the bottom at the valley looking at the hill, and Dani is going on and on about the towns there and how their names are Arabized names of Hebrew names, and that the Maccabeans were here, and the mayor of this town, his name is so-and-so, and that clan's name is actually an Arabized name of a Hebrew clan, and so on and so forth. And I'm looking at him and it's like, wow, that's interesting. Like, my master's thesis was actually on that area. Like, I actually know it really, really well, right? And it dawned to me that Dani and I are looking at the same hill, but we're seeing 2 very different things. And then I realized I don't need to convince Dani of my narrative. I don't need him to accept my history. What I need from Dani is to understand what is an agreement on security that's good enough for him, that would make him feel satisfied that this agreement provides enough security for Israel. The fact that I think it's ridiculous that a country like Israel, that has a nuclear weapon and has the strongest army in the region, has security issues, is totally irrelevant. Because if Dani is not satisfied with the agreement, we'll just not have an agreement. So I'm going to need to listen very well to his definition of security and what makes him feel safe, regardless of my opinion on that, my objective opinion, right? Conversely, I needed to make sure that Danny understood what independence and freedom looks for me. His opinion on Arabs and whether we belong there or not is irrelevant, right? He's not going to get an agreement on security if I'm not going to get an agreement on a Palestinian state that is completely free and sovereign, not sovereignty minus, right? So once we got there, we realized that we are actually partners because we, for our own reasons, we want an agreement, right? And that's something we're going to discuss, that agreement itself is not the purpose. The purpose is to achieve our interest. We have our own different and maybe contradictory reasons to think why an agreement is going to be good for us, right? And therefore, we are both invested in understanding each other's interests and positions and how they think and what they value and why they value it and how much is it more important than this other thing. Because the more I understand that, the more I understand where or discover where the exchange can happen. Okay. And actually, we actually started having much better